Our next speaker, Jack Kantola, is fulfilling assignment number 3 in the new Pathways educational program. The challenge in this assignment is to do a speech based on research. Jack grew up in the woods of northern Minnesota, where he had many encounters with the wild animals. And yes, he has been a hunter for much of his life. Today, he does his hunting with a camera, that is. Jack recently read Dan Flores' book entitled Coyote America, which gave him a better understanding of one of the critters that he used to hunt. Speaking 5 to 7 minutes, the title of his speech, Coyote America. Please help me welcome Jack Kantola.
Dance. When you hear the word coyote or coyote, both are acceptable, what comes to your mind? Is it Wile E. Coyote from the Roadrunner cartoons? That poor guy who put up with so much stuff from the Roadrunner? Or maybe it's the coyote that goes out and kills all of our lovely antelope and elk and deer that we want to spend so much time looking at in the national parks that we have. Or perhaps it's the coyote that comes after your little pets when you're taking them out for a walk. Or is it this magnificent creature that serves a very, very useful role in our world? Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, most welcome return guest, Greg. There's a number of things about coyotes I want to share with you. 3 things, actually, 3 categories. One is that coyotes are survivors. They just keep carrying on. Number 2 is coyotes are useful. And number 3, coyotes are to be respected, not feared. Back in the late 1800s through the early 1960s, there was a huge effort to eradicate coyotes from the western states of the United States. And they were doing the same thing with gray wolves. The eradication efforts on gray wolves was very successful. On coyotes, not so much. The first method of extermination was bounty hunting. In the state of Montana, from 1883 to 1938, they paid bounties on almost 900,000 coyotes. Imagine what that is in relation to the other states that had that same program. And when I was growing up in northern Minnesota, I collected some of those bounties. And it still goes on today. The other method they found much more effective was the poisoning campaign using strychnine. And it killed hundreds of thousands, even millions of coyotes. And throughout the West, they would just lace carrion with strychnine poisoning, and the coyotes would come and eat it and suffer an incredible, excruciating, terrible death. The interesting thing is that it also caused collateral damage, because other animals go in, birds like bald eagles, go in and eat the same thing, the same carrion that the coyotes were eating. So they killed hundreds of thousands of other birds and animals as well. But the coyotes survived. One of the methods that they used for survival in that situation was to simply have bigger litters. As their population went down, they went from having 4 or 5 babies to having 14 or 15 babies. Coyotes are amazing in their effort to survive. When in the early 1800s or mid 1800s, the vast population of coyotes was west of the Mississippi River. But today, the coyotes have expanded into almost every state in the Union. They've expanded into Canada and into Alaska and down into Mexico. These guys are absolute survivors. The interesting thing is that we have urban coyotes as well. Back in the days before dog catchers, the coyotes didn't come into towns because they had so many wild dogs. And they were a threat that they didn't want to take on. But just as soon as we got dog catchers, coyotes moved in. There have seen coyotes in Central Park in New York City. And it's estimated that Los Angeles itself has a population of some 5,000 coyotes. And I know from personal experience that Riverside has their share as well. I got up to go to a Toastmasters meeting one morning, and there was a coyote in the street with our neighbor's cat in its mouth. I ran down the street yelling like crazy, "Drop that cat! Drop that cat!" Urban coyotes. My second point, coyotes serve a useful purpose because they help to maintain a balance in nature. Coyotes basically eat small animals and berries, and birds, as you can see in this case. They generally do not kill large animals because they're not really able to do it. But they do eat the carrion of animals that have been killed by other things. I know my experience with coyotes when I was living in Westlake Village. I would engage them in battle with my Springer Spaniel. My Springer Spaniel, thankfully, was big enough to be able to put up a good battle, and he generally did. A couple of points. Finger problems. In Kern County in 1927, they had a major coyote eradication program. And soon they found there were so many mice and rats and rodents that when they crossed the streets and the cars ran over them, it made the highway slippery. It made it so slippery they had to close the road for a time. In Utah, another major eradication program was taking place, and the farmers found they had to fence their fields to keep the rabbits out, because the rabbit population absolutely exploded. Coyotes are to be respected, not feared. I have a couple of rules in relation to coyote management. One of those is, don't run from a coyote. They're not going to attack you. Now, there are the rare instances where they may have rabies or something, they might. But generally speaking, you're better off standing up to them, shout at them, throw things at them. Number 2, keep your little pets on a leash and pay attention to where you're going. Number 3, don't leave pet food out. You're just inviting problems. And number 4, enjoy their presence. I happen to respect this guy. He's an important part of our nature. And I hope that today's speech has helped you understand them a little better. Madam Toastmaster.